Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's just me today, and that's because we're going to be talking about movies. If you saw our last video, you know that Steph needs to brush up on her actors. If you haven't seen it, check it out, it's pretty funny. In today's video, since we've entered the month of December, we are now officially in the holiday season. We're going to be talking about holiday movies. So I don't know if you've seen the old classic Christmas movies that are done with the stop motion animation. There's a handful of them. But what we're going to be doing is essentially recasting those movies with live Hollywood actors. I'm going to play producer for the day, and I will pick actors to play those roles. So if you haven't seen those movies, I would highly suggest it. I'll go through what the movies are one by one. Check them out if you haven't seen them. They'll probably be on TV all month, but it should be pretty easy to find. So the first movie is The Year Without a Santa Claus. And I'll put up a picture of the movie cover too as we go through them. So that's the first one. And I picked a few characters in each movie that we're gonna go through. So for the first one, A Year Without a Santa Claus. First, we'll talk about Santa. Santa in this movie will be played by the one and only Jeff Bridges. Jeff Bridges is an iconic Hollywood actor, and I'm pretty sure that he hasn't played Santa before. So I feel like he would do a really good job. So he's our first player in this movie. Second is going to be Mrs. Claus, and she will be played by Jane Seymour. I picked Jane Seymour because she, I think, would be a pretty good fit with Jeff. And Mrs. Claus in this movie, her character is kind of a no-nonsense. She's taken up for Santa while he's sick in bed, and they're trying to figure out how to save Christmas. So I think she would play a really good Mrs. Claus in that role. Next, we have the duo of Jingle and Jangle. So my Jingle and Jangle would be Key and Peele. These guys are a pretty awesome comedic duo. They're really funny together. They also actually have similar body types to these characters, where one is a little bit taller and thinner, the other is a little bit shorter and stouter. And I think that they would add some really good comedy to the movie, because they're pretty prominent characters throughout the whole thing. Next, we have probably the two characters that most people recognize from this movie. So we have Heat Miser, and he is going to be played by Jack Black, who, similar to the last one, kind of fits the body type where he's a little bit shorter and stout. Comparatively, the next character is kind of the opposite. But Jack Black we all know he can sing, and he kind of has that raspy voice that I think would go well as the Heat Miser. In contrast, we have Snow Miser, who is going to be played by, this one might be a little bit of a surprise, but I'm going to pick Jim Parsons to be the Snow Miser. So most people probably only know Jim Parsons from The Big Bang Theory. He played just kind of a nerdy guy on that show, but he actually has been on Broadway, and he can sing, and he's a really good actor as well. And he fits the body type. So he's kind of a thinner, taller man. He'd be a good contrast to Jack Black as Heat Miser, and I think the two of them would do a really good job. So the next movie we have, Santa Claus is Coming to Town. So this one, and I think the next few, have a narrator. And so the narrator in this movie is going to be played by Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is obviously another huge iconic actor, and he has some experience with Christmas movies, The Polar Express. He's been in a lot of other movies like that. So he has a really good voice. He would do a really good job as the narrator. Next is the Winter Warlock. Pretty interesting character. So for him, I would have Christopher Walken play the Winter Warlock. He kind of fits the archetype of the Winter Warlock. He's kind of a tall, larger man, and obviously very unique in the characters that he plays. I think that he would bring a certain quirkiness to that character and probably make it really entertaining. Next is Burgermeister Meisterburger, and this character would be played by Christoph Waltz, who is a typical villain in a lot of movies. He plays a really good villain, and I think that he's also German, which kind of makes sense with that character. Next is Miss Jessica, who becomes Mrs. Claus after she marries Kris Kringle. So Miss Jessica would be played by Amy Adams, who looks a lot like the character. That's kind of one of the main reasons why I picked her. Miss Jessica has red hair. Amy Adams is one of the most famous redheaded actresses in Hollywood. So, and also she kind of has an innocent and charming demeanor. So I think that fits along well with the character. And finally, the last one in this movie is Kris Kringle, who will be played by Michael C. Hall. So he's not that well known of an actor, but he's actually really good. He was on the show Dexter. He's done both protagonist and antagonists, but he also, similar to some of the other people we've talked about, he can sing. I think he was in a band or something at one point, but he's a singer, and in this movie, Kris Kringle does a fair amount of singing. He could play a younger guy and an older guy pretty well, and I think Kris Kringle has kind of a progression of age in this movie, so it would go well. Then kind of later in the movie, he would have a beard, so it would kind of make sense. So that's it for that one. Next movie we're talking about is Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. This is absolute classic. This movie, similar to the last one, has another narrator. The narrator is actually named Sam the Snowman. I don't know if you know him, but I would have him played by Sam Elliott, who obviously has the same name. So that was one of the first reasons I thought of him. But Sam Elliott has an amazing narrating voice. He's in a lot of the Ford truck commercials, I think they are, but he'd make a great narrator. Next is, it also seems kind of an obvious choice to me, Hermie the Misfit Elf, who has a very kind of funny look. He has a blonde wisp of hair coming out of his hat. He would be portrayed by Jack McBrayer, who I think is a pretty funny character actor. Jack is kind of a silly actor. Obviously he has blonde hair as well, but he also has a little bit of like shyness and timidness, which Hermie has as well. Then we have Yukon Cornelius. I would have played by Dwayne Johnson. So Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is obviously a larger statured man. He is super popular in movies right now, and I think that it would kind of be funny to see him as this big lumberjack man with a big beard. Next is Bumble, the big abominable snowman character, played by Ron Perlman, who was Hellboy in those movies, so he's had experience playing kind of like fictional characters. He's a big hulking man similar to The Rock, so he would fit well onto that character. I don't really know if Bumble has any speaking lines, but in my mind, that would be a good fit there. And finally, the last character in this movie is Rudolph, obviously. I would have Rudolph played by Freddie Highmore. So he's been in a lot of TV shows. He was actually the young boy in the most recent Charlie and the Chocolate Factory movie. He kind of has a baby face, so he seems like kind of a young and innocent person who would fit well, I think, in the Rudolph character. All right, let's move on to the fourth and final movie, which is Jack Frost. This movie, similar to the last two, has another narrator. It's a little groundhog whose name is Pardon Me Pete. And I would actually change this up a little bit. So instead of being played by a male, I would have this be played by a female, Mindy Kaling. The reason I chose her was she kind of has an interesting voice, and the original Pardon Me Pete was Buddy Hackett, who had kind of a really funny, different voice. Mindy, I think, also has a similar, not a similar voice to his, but in a similarly distinctive way. She has a different voice, so I think that she would be really good and also probably pretty funny in this role. Obviously, we'd have to probably change the name from Pete to something else, but I think that she would do a good job there. Next is Snip, who's kind of like a fatherly figure to Jack Frost in the movie, and it would be played by Eugene Levy. So he, I guess, has a similar look to this character Snip, who has glasses, and in his movies he's played kind of like a fatherly figure, so he fits well. Next is Kubla Kraus, who's the villain in the movie, played by Stanley Tucci. Stanley Tucci is, I think, a great actor. He's done both good guys and bad guys. Also, he's dynamic enough to be kind of evil but also funny. And that's what this character is. He has a little puppet he talks to throughout the whole movie, so he's supposed to be, I guess, a little bit scary and a little bit funny, and I think Stanley Tucci would do a good job with that. Next is Eliza, who is the love interest of Jack Frost in the movie, played by Sophie Turner. She's obviously super popular right now. One of the reasons I chose her is that she kind of lines up pretty well in age with the protagonist I chose as Jack Frost. She also has a similar look to the character of Eliza, long blonde hair, and I think that she'd be perfect there. So Jack Frost finally is Ansel Elgort, who isn't, I guess, super well known, but he's a younger actor who's been in a lot of movies, and he's been in a fair amount of like romantic movies, I think, and this one of the 4 movies I think has the most romance probably between Jack Frost and Eliza. So I think the two of them would work really well together. One last thing, the Jack Frost character kind of flies around as he switches between his like human and Jack Frost form. Ansel, I think, would have like enough energy and be young enough to do kind of those acrobatic things. So the last one I have as kind of a bonus, there's just one more character I'm adding in here just for fun, is Frosty the Snowman. There's not a whole lot of characters from that movie, but I think that if I were to cast Frosty, I would make it Eric Stonestreet, who is, I think would be perfect because he's a little bit of a bigger guy, but he has like a really big personality as well. So I believe he can also sing, and Frosty has some songs. And he's just kind of a really fun, energetic guy who would, I think, fit into that role pretty well. So those are my live action casts for the classic Christmas movies. I'd be interested to see what you guys think of them. I'm sure that you guys have some opinions of your own and probably some ideas for actors you would have play these characters. Let me know in the comments below what actors you would have in your Christmas movies. Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you want to see some more holiday videos, we're definitely going to do a whole lot more stuff this month. So stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't, and we'll see you next time. Bye.